The Indigenous Cultural Tourism Program at the Agusan Marsh was conceptualized in 2008. I met Jason Sibog, who was president of Tuklas Katutubo at a U.S. State Department-sponsored program at the Northern Illinois University in the United States. And part of that program was different participants would collaborate to come out with project proposals. One of the project proposals was a cultural tourism program in indigenous communities. So one of the pilot projects that we wanted to do at the time was at the Agusan Marsh.
And when I learned that Ivan is advocating for heritage conservation, and I was advocating for cultural empowerment and preservation, we thought of like combining the two programs into one package for the indigenous communities, so that the indigenous communities will have the appreciation of their culture as well as protection of this cultural heritage.
In 2010, I was trying to visit all the provinces of the Philippines, and one of the provinces that I had not visited yet at that time was Agusan del Sur. So I contacted Jason if he could arrange a stay here at the Agusan Marsh. No? So this was in 2010. So Jason contacted the community here at Sitio Panlabuhan and told them that I was coming. No? So I came over. They picked me up in Bunawan. It was a three-hour riverboat ride coming into the Agusan Marsh. So that's where I met Ate Tess Babanto, who is one of the community leaders of Tuklas Katutubo.
Tuklas Katutubo is a national organization of indigenous peoples in the Philippines, working towards the protection, promotion of the rights, welfare, and development of the indigenous peoples. They work voluntarily, and they have committed to support their indigenous communities and their advocacy.
So I was warmly welcomed. It was such a great experience. When I got in, of course, there's the welcome ritual that all tourists will have to undergo. It is part of the local culture, and they believe that you have to undergo this ritual so that nothing bad will happen to you. No, this is for all visitors when you come in, and of course, they prepare the local food. Fish is the main meal here in the marsh. Obviously, no? So, they just go fishing, and they can bring you fresh catch for all your meals. No? We got to go boating around the marsh. Of course, we used their a boat called the Baroto, which is a hollowed out log. No? So it's scary for some people, especially since there are no outriggers, and one wrong move, you might fall into the marsh. But of course, the boatmen are very well trained, and they'll make sure that, of course, you are safe. We got to go boating around the marsh, and the scenery was fantastic. Twice a year, it becomes a staging area for migratory birds. Since it's in the southern part of the Philippines, it becomes a migratory. It becomes an area for migratory birds for the southern hemisphere. No, during the winters in Australia, of course, it also becomes a staging area for migratory birds during the winters of the northern hemisphere. So that's twice a year, and of course, there are endemic bird species, no, and local bird species that you can find here in the Agusan Marsh. So it's a it's a very interesting place for people who are into bird watching. During that visit, they arranged a sort of town hall meeting, a consultation. They sat down with me together with the elders, and they talked about their experiences with tourists. Tourists would come into their ancestral domain. Of course, this area of the marsh is a property, ancestral property of the community. This belongs to them. And tourists would come in, and when they approach the tourists to collect registration or entry fees, no, the tourists would tell them that we've already paid the local government. We've already given our fees. No? So in the end, even if this is their place, they did not directly benefit from the tourist arrivals, and they felt it was unfair, no, that they were not actually getting anything, no, when tourists come into the place.
Way back in 2009, when tourists visit this community, they always forget to respect the cultures and traditions of the indigenous communities. Like they don't follow process and protocols like consultations. They don't dwell on rituals. They do not appreciate the connectiveness of the culture, the people, and the environment here in Agusan del Sur. They just destroy. They get animals. They destroy the environment here. That they did realize that this is connected to the ways of life of the indigenous communities. That's for one. Second, when the tourists come here, sometimes being cultural sensitive is the thing that they always forget to to embrace. They should be sensitive in the ways of life of the indigenous communities. That's why we have this program with IBAN, and we want to change the concept of the tourists when they come here in Sitio Panlabuhan. They appreciate their culture and tradition as well as the environment that the communities is dwelling in.
When I asked them, are you sure that you want tourists to come into your community? And they stress that they do want to invite tourists. They want tourism to be part of their livelihoods. They needed help, in attracting tourists and coming up with programs in order to accommodate these tourists in their community so that they would directly benefit from tourism arrivals. So it was in 2010 that we decided to come up with the Indigenous Cultural Tourism Program here in Sitio Panlabuhan, Loreto, Agusan del Sur, which is part of the Agusan Marsh Wildlife Sanctuary.
Dahil natingnan niya nung una, dahil doon ko pa siya pinatulog sa yung cottage doon na nagiba ng bagyo, nakita niya na maraming kakulangan. Tapos sabi niya, Ate Marites, ano pa ba ang kulang niyo sa dito? Sir, yung lutuan, yung plato, yung halimbawa, yung tulugan, yung beads, mga beadings, gano'n. Tapos mga life jacket. Tapos yung kung halimbawa, pag entertain sa bisita, yung mga, yung damit namin, wala. Tapos yung, di pa kami marunong kumanta, sumayaw. Kaya yun ang ini-encourage niya sa amin na kailangan, ginawa siya ng paraan na para matulungan kami, maturuan kami.
So from 2010 to about 2014, it was slow progress. We had difficulty finding funding. Of course, we were preparing the community. We would come here every now and then on our personal funds. Of course, we weren't able to buy a lot of materials that they needed. And there would be trainings, and the community will also mention what they need, no? So we decided to come up with a program, the Indigenous Cultural Tourism Program here in Agusan Marsh.
2014, nang dumating na ang US Embassy, yun na ang pagbalik ni Sir Ivan dito na may good news sa siyang dala.
We were lucky in 2014 that we were invited to apply for a grant to the US Embassy. They were giving grants to alumni of US State Department programs, just like the one which I and Jason participated in Northern Illinois University. So that made us eligible to apply for a grant. And luckily, the grant that we requested from the US Embassy was approved. And we were able to purchase a lot of stuff. Of course, the grant covered training programs and materials for the training, and the School of Living Tradition.
At it is yung natupad mo sa ayong mga pangarap mo na mga kahit kaunti lang na mga nandyan na. Yun na talaga yung life jacket, mga gamit sa kusina, gamit sa tulugan.
We did a lot of things with the community the past year. Of course, when it came to the training programs, we trained them on hospitality, on cuisine, on preparing the beds and accommodation. We taught them about tourism security in the place, how to handle the tourists. But the most important part of the training program is that we brought back their traditions. One of the things that we realized here in the Manobo community of Sitio Panlabuhan when we came in 2010 is that they had forgotten all their cultural traditions, the songs, the dances. They did not even have traditional attire and traditional instruments. So as part of the program, we decided that we will bring back those traditions. We brought in cultural masters to train the community.
In fact, one of the programs or component of this IP-based tourism is that the community is slowly reviving the culture that that was lost for many years because this educational system here are not promoting indigenous knowledge and systems and practices. So the program will really help revive or bring back the history, their traditions, their language, their arts, and the entire culture to showcase it among the visitors and the tourists.
We basically revived these traditions that were lost. We've purchased instruments such as the agong and traditional drums, no, which of course the community would not have been able to purchase without the proper funding. We also purchased traditional clothing for them so that at least when they welcome the visitors, they could showcase their own Agusan Manobo culture. No?
Ano na kami, produce na kami ng mga gamit pang sayaw, yung damit, yung mga instrument. Pag may pupunta dito, may higaan na, may plato na kami, may ganun. At saka yung mga gamit pa na iba dyan, solar, binilan kami ng solar, at saka mayroon ng electric fan yun. Malaking tulong sa US Embassy sa amin. Dahil kahit hindi kami nakikita sang personal dito, si Sir Ivan lang ang nandito, pero nakikita nila ang pinaka needs namin ba. Nasiyahan kami ba na kahit yung maliit lang na mga materials na nandyan para makatanggap na kami ng bisita, yun ang una naming magamit. Pinakamasaya na kami kung nandito na yun nakikita na namin ngayon.
So the Manobo community here in Agusan Marsh is now returning to its roots. We've been able to train them regularly on Manobo songs and dances. They now have their attire, they now have their costumes. So it's a revival of traditions, and this is actually part and parcel of the cultural tourism program. Of course, without culture, without these cultural elements, it wouldn't be a cultural tourism program in the first place, no?
The program, the Indigenous Peoples Community-based tourism program, will really help the communities in terms of empowering their cultures and traditions. So when this program is installed in this area, the tourists will have to follow protocols and consultations. They will appreciate the cultures and traditions of the communities, and the community themselves will also showcase their ways of life among the tourists. This way, respect will come in, sensitivity will come in, and at the same time, promotion of their cultural traditions in Sitio Panlabuhan. The program has really done a lot for this community. For example, the livelihood has improved because most of the communities are developing their traditional crafts. This program will help the indigenous communities empower their cultural heritage when we do this program. For example, when tourists come here, the indigenous communities will be presenting their ways of life and traditions and cultures like rituals, dances, and songs. And at the same time, they started to appreciate their ways of life and their language and their dances and their arts. Same way, this will also improve the livelihood of the communities, not only like showcasing what is Agusan Marsh, that this is a Manobo community, but also improving the ways of life of the community, like they present livelihood crops, their community, their food, what they can offer here in the Agusan Marsh.
Unang ako, unang pasalamatan, labi na sa ato ang bisita nato kang Sir Ivan. Sir, salamat yun sir sa inyong pagsuporta sa inyong lugar sa Sitio Panlabuhan.
So this program aims to bring in a special kind of tourists, those who want to immerse with the Manobo community, those who want to experience what it is to live in a floating village like Sitio Panlabuhan, and those who want to experience, of course, nature at its best. No, the Agusan Marsh Wildlife Sanctuary is fabulous. It's a fantastic place. The Agusan Marsh is a wetland of international importance, and it is a staging area for migratory birds, and at the same time, there are a lot of endemic bird species here. So it's also a special place for those who are into bird watching. Of course, there are a lot of activities. You can go boating in the marsh. You can just sit back and relax and enjoy the scenery. So it's such a fantastic experience for tourists who enjoy the outdoors. No, of course, the accommodations are very basic. But if you're the type of person who wants to see nature, if you want to experience communities like the Manobos here in Sitio Panlabuhan, this is the program that you have to experience. So we are inviting tourists to come over here to Sitio Panlabuhan now that the community is more than ready to welcome you with open arms. We've prepared the community. They are very excited to actually welcome visitors. So please do consider the Sitio Panlabuhan Manobo Floating Village as your next destination.